I think that where it will play more of an important role now, and I don't know what your market is like, but stuff is sitting on the market a little bit longer than what it used to. So again, like we have to start positioning ourselves as to not only what differentiates us as an agent, but what differentiates you as a seller. So if we have the same exact property for $250,000, like what is making yours a little bit more desirable? Well, we've already had a pre-inspection. You can know all of the things ahead of time.
Welcome to the Leading Lane podcast for real estate pros by real estate pros with your hosts, Ashley Frederick and Stephen Birch. If you're looking for an honest, authentic, and raw perspective, you found it.
Welcome everyone back to the Leading Lane podcast. This week we thought we would go over a little bit about inspections and just how maybe the market's changing a little bit and the frenzies of, no contingencies on offers, maybe is changing a little bit. So we're seeing here a lot of lots of things come up in inspections. And back in the day, I used to do a lot of pre-inspections, like before we listed. And I do actually think I'm going to start recommending that for numerous reasons. So we thought maybe we'd just delve into what the market's looking like right now as far as what requests look like, what are ways to handle those requests, and maybe ways to just be ahead of the game before you even get to that situation.
So, like, what do you feel that the reason? What is the pro of doing a pre-inspection when you get a listing?
Lots. So I think one is, especially like if someone is on a time crunch. I mean, I don't know about you guys right now, but like getting contractors into properties is not easy. So if we give ourselves a runway, like, oh crap, we need to get some of these electrical things taken care of, like they could even at least be worked on like while you're getting the listing ready. But one of the things I think it can save costs too is that in the pre-home inspection, let's say that things come up. I mean, if the seller, if they're handy, can fix them, they can hire their handyman to fix them. They can do whatever. But once you're under a contract, sure, the seller might have the right to cure, but 9 times out of 10, the amendment's going to say licensed plumber, licensed electrician, etc. So sure, you're paying for the pre-inspection, but now you're not paying for the service work to be done in that. I had an example where it was a high-end listing, and again, people don't go in their attics and they don't go in their crawl spaces, and in their attic they had mold, and instead of us listing it that week, we postponed the listing 2 weeks, have the mold mitigation out, and then like the listing was ready, the reports were available, all of the work to done, so like it just sped everything up. Where like right now I had one where the offer fell apart because of mildew mold, and it took us 6 weeks to get someone in to repair it, and then now it's just like, how do you get traction back on that property? Really, it just makes things a little bit more difficult. So I think the ability to make repairs yourself, but I mean, just really the ability of like knowing that there's not something that's going to stall out your transaction.
I mean, it's negotiation power too, right? Like you are now able to provide a report, the repairs that you've done, and still the buyer can choose to go and do their own, a whole different inspector, and that's their prerogative. But these are, I think sometimes sellers or us as owners, we are a little bit nose blind to our own properties, or we don't see things just because we see it all the time and it's not a big deal to us. So it just helps tremendously. So how do you position that with a seller when you're trying to go win the listing? Is that something that you pay for out of pocket? Is that something that they pay for? How does that work?
Yeah, I do it that they pay for it. I mean, I think it's an advantage to them. I think that there are people that, you could work that into a compensation package. Like, if a higher compensation, you might do that. And I know that there are some people that do that. I think that's a great option too, especially just depending on if you have a inspector that's willing to work with you as far as, hey, if I give you X amount of pre-inspections, can we negotiate that price? That's definitely an option. I would say that most people, I explain to them like the importance of knowing ahead of time. And then I think a lot of them see the value of, maybe $500 spent on not being delayed weeks or not knowing or having the ability to fix them. So for the most part, I actually have a lot of sellers that have just asked, like, do you think I should? Would you recommend it? Would you do it? When I sold my house, I had a pre-home inspection, same thing. Like I didn't want to be, although I wasn't expecting anything, I didn't want to be surprised, what, 3 weeks from closing. If you think about a typical closing, that's 5 to 6 weeks. And then we're all again like, oh no, now what? Or do you start over? And so I do just think explaining to sellers like the benefit of them and how it can speed up a transaction. It speeds up the transparency. I mean, I think too, you might get, stronger offers too, because people already know what they're walking into. Or to be honest, let's say that they're not going to fix these things. Like, then I would price accordingly. Like, hey, you now know these things. We need to price it accordingly. So I think that, again, same thing. It's trying to prep them for the most realistic long run.
To me, it's almost like, we require buyers to have pre-approvals, right? Like, and so it's kind of like a pre-approval, if you will, for a seller to be able to have this up front on there. What, like, have you had a seller say, no, I'm not paying for it whatsoever. I'm not doing that at all?
I mean, not that they're not paying for it, but that they would rather just wait to see what comes up if a buyer were to choose to do. And I think that it'll get easier as the market's changing. Again, that was a harder discussion, but I still had some sellers do it in the height of the market. But like, right, when you listed a property and you knew you're going to get 10 offers, you knew that likely the offer you accepted wasn't going to have an inspection. I'll be honest though, like this last couple of weeks, the amount of problems in home inspections, in the back of my mind, I keep on thinking like all those people that didn't have home inspections, in the COVID rampage of frenzy makes me nervous. I remember whenever I would have someone do it, I would just like, promise me that you'll have one after you move in. And a lot of them did. And right, I just would give these examples of things that they don't know about, but I just, I forgot where I was going with that. So
That's all good. But to me, like, if a seller is going to be like,
oh,
no,
not
like,
really.
like not motivated to do it at all, not that they don't want to pay for it, or they want to wait, like, it almost kind of raises a red flag for me a bit of
Mhm.
like, so is there something, do you know something that you're not disclosing, or is this how you're going to be in negotiations of you're going to be so stubborn and not do anything? So do I need to prepare for that, or is this even the direction I want to go if
Mhm.
I'm taking on the listing? So um
I think
go ahead.
I remember what I was going to say now. So I think that where it will play more of an important role now, and I don't know what your market is like, but stuff is sitting on the market a little bit longer than what it used to. So again, like we have to start positioning ourselves as to not only what differentiates us as an agent, but what differentiates you as a seller. So if we have the same exact property for $250,000, like what is making yours a little bit more desirable? Well, we've already had a pre-inspection. You can know all of the things ahead of time. So I think that as the market changes, we need to think about ways to position our sellers so that they do have an advantage over other listings, so that maybe they won't be those listings that are on for 90 days now or two price reductions in.
Right. I think like it's no longer the wonderful sellers market, right? Like that
Mhm.
everything's going to fly off. So I think that, like you said, differentiating against the competition, and what we used to do quite often on our flips was be able to offer, the um, home inspection up front, the buyer's cost credit, right? Like right up front, the home warranty right up front. So the goal was to make it to where that the buyer didn't have to have, cold feet or know, like, how do I negotiate this here? If you bring us this price, these are everything that you're going to get included, and already have everything right up front ready for them to be able to go. So it's easier of a transaction to come, to the table. So I think
Mhm.
the more that you can do those different inspections or reports or whatever else, it definitely helps, because we don't need any more headaches in a transaction, right? Like, there's already going to be enough. So adding in additional opinions and everybody else like know what we are dealing with and having the true picture, I think helps the seller tremendously with their negotiation power too.
I think too, like in our area, I don't know if you guys have had any like major insurance claims, but we had a hailstorm 2 years ago. I feel like we're gonna be dealing with this hailstorm for like the next 5 years. I feel like it's coming up like 3 transactions this week. So same thing, like if you had the pre-home inspection and it says hail damage, like we are in this like small little window yet that they might be able to file an insurance claim. So again, like had we known that right away. So I went to property earlier this week and mom hasn't lived there for 3 years, but I knew it was on that side of town. So I was like, so did anybody look at your roof in the last 2 years? And he was like, no, but the skylight broke 2 years ago. And I was like,
Oh boy.
so same thing. Like I was very upfront with him, like, we might have to have a roofer look at this. And like, we might have to disclose that there's hail damage. And oddly enough, I had hail damage on a roof last week. And I didn't think I thought the last hailstorm was October, and they called their insurance agent, and their insurance agent said that there was one in May of this year. And they got a new roof, which is probably also why we're not going to have insurance in like 5 years.
Oh, damn insurance. So with the inspections, like going through with the seller, let's flip the script. If you were representing the buyer and the seller already had a home inspection completed, would you take that home inspection that the seller has already provided, or would you have your buyer do a whole new home inspection?
That's a tough one. I think sometimes it actually depends on the inspector. I think in our area, like we know the inspectors that are thorough and in depth, and we know the inspectors that aren't. So if it was one that I would recommend, I would previously recommend, I think I would tell them that. But I would also tell them that like each home inspector is trained differently. I have had, no lie, the property I closed on last week had 3 inspections in the last 90 days. He had a pre-inspection, an offer with an inspection that fell apart, and then the third offer. And they were all different. I mean, it blows my mind. So, I mean, there is like that aspect that people do see things differently. I think in that situation, which we used to do in COVID times too, was be a little bit more creative about, like putting a number to the allowance of defects. So anything under a total value of $5,000 or $1,000, I think I'd feel more comfortable in that situation, and that, hey, like we've had an inspector there. It appears that they've made all these, but let's just put this in there in case there is anything major that we missed. I think it's always hard for me to tell people not to have a home inspection. And ultimately, like, I feel like that has to be their call. I mean, let's be honest. I've also told many people to have a home inspection and they don't, which obviously too, like we've changed our forms and we have a buyer acknowledgement. If someone doesn't want a home inspection, they have to sign off that we advise that they do, because what happens is they don't have a home inspection and then they buy the house and then something happens and then we want to be the ones that they blame. So we do obviously always suggest it. I do think that that's probably a case by case, basis too. And I think, house by house too, like when you're talking about these 1920s homes, like they're just more apt to have more problems, versus a new build, right? You shouldn't have those types of problems. I think it's probably case by case, but what about you? What do you think you would do in those situations?
I don't know. I think that's a good answer, Liv. Like it depends on who the inspector was, right? I mean, I think it's wild that we have home inspectors. I don't know if it's a requirement for them to be licensed, insured in your guys' state.
Yeah.
In our state, there's no licensing.
What?
There's no yeah, it's like the wild, wild west out here, right? So
Oh no, ours is a licensed home inspector.
yeah, no, like so there are some that have licensing as far as like through education or whatever, but the state does not mandate or require any sort of licensing with them. So
That's crazy.
we have, I mean, when you say that we have difference of opinions across the board, we really have it across the board. So I don't know, it kind of depends on who it is. Also, like I've had to where I've had the home inspector go back out there now for the buyer's eyes. And this, I think it's at a discounted price since they've already been there. So
Sure.
that always helps there as well. But
Like to recheck the repairs?
check the repairs, see if there's anything else that they
No.
missed, type of thing.
No.
Yeah. So I think that's because I think also in our area, primarily a lot of our loans are VA. So there's this misconception that, well, there's going to be a VA inspector that's going to come out to the property, an appraiser. That's not what they're there for. They're not there to inspect the property for the buyer. They're there to inspect the property to ensure value for the bank that is going to be making the loan. So it's always trying to get people to understand that, like, just because there's an appraisal does not mean that they're going to check these different parameters. So it's tough to get people to see that, but I always suggest getting a home inspection and making sure that we have ourselves covered, because you're right. They're going to come back and they're going to say, Stephen, you didn't do this. It's your fault.
Mhm. Well,
And
and
that's
I think sometimes it even like depends on the buyer. So
sure.
especially like a first time home buyer, I do think it's critical. I don't know about your inspectors, but ours too will kind of just do a run through of the house with them. Like, here's the water shut off. Here's your furnace filter, like the things that they just wouldn't know. Where if it's the person that's bought 10 houses, right? They might be like, Ashley, I've been through this. I don't care. I'll take care of it. I'm a handyman. I'm a contractor, right? So I think that there's so many variables.
Yeah, absolutely. So with that, like the home warranty companies,
Mhm.
do you have your sellers do offer home warranty up front, or is that in the negotiation? How does that handle for your listings?
Also, case by case basis. I think so. There's kind of like twofold. So there's the seller part of it, and then there's the buyer part of it. So the seller part of it, I really feel like it has to do with the condition of the home itself.
Mm-hmm.
So, like if the furnace is 25 years old and the AC is 25 years old and the water heater is 15 years old and all the appliances are 10 years old, I just tell them that's going to be a concern for the buyer. So why don't we just give them peace of mind right away? So that instead of their feedback being the furnace is old, the AC is old, our feedback can just be like, well, I totally understand. And the seller wants to give you peace of mind. So ours run for 13 months after homeownership.
Mm-hmm.
The one selling point, and I don't know if you guys have this, but we have 3 plans, and the top plan, that will so like it covers the seller while they have it
Mhm.
listed.
Mhm.
Like the bottom plan only is for the buyer.
Mhm.
So I tell people like, well, let's spend the $200 more because during the length of our listing, and if something were to come up during the home inspection, you could actually use the home warranty. So I would say like in older homes, I don't feel like most sellers like buffer that at all. Like they're normally like, if you think that will help me sell quicker, then I will. So I would say that like new homes, I'll just tell people like, I mean, your furnace is 2 years old. I don't understand, those types of things. But on the flip side, I do have a lot of buyers requests for home warranties, and same thing. It's the ability to negotiate. So a lot of agents will write their offer with the 625. So it's only covering the buyer. I write mine as the 825, and then I remind, so in ours, then it actually retros the seller. So even if they didn't list with it, if the buyer asks for the 825 in the offer, then the seller would be covered from the day of the offer until closing. So like I present that to the seller as, well, they were already asking for 625 just for their coverage. If you pay $200 more, you'll now be covered
Mm-hmm.
until we get to closing, which could be 60 to 90 days from now. So I always have to like reiterate to the other agent, it will now cover the seller. I think they forget. But man, we get a receipt like every time a home warranty claim is put in from any of our properties, and it's a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think I will say that typically when you don't see an inspection, that's another, like I'll typically follow it up within a home warranty. So that's kind of like, hey seller, my buyer isn't asking for inspection, which could save you thousands, but they are going to ask for a home warranty. So it
Sure.
kind of helps skates that a little bit.
Yeah. No, that's smart. Never even thought about just increasing it from the other side. Like that,
Mhm.
I mean, and then how would that work? Like if something pops up off the home inspection and you put that in the initial offer, I mean, something.
So ours on the top plan, it covers anything that's considered pre-existing. So that's the other part that's really nice.
Yeah, that's awesome. I know there's a couple home warranty companies like that we will not use at all.
Mhm.
We actually have it like on the property management side that like we won't touch them like with a 10-foot pole. But I can't remember if there's another company that I really like that because they are able to use, or we're able to use our own contractors. So it's way easier because we're out here in rural America. A lot of the contractors that contract with the home warranty companies are a couple hours away. And so trying to get everybody to coordinate and whatnot, like it was just havoc. So I like being able to have the choice of contractor too.
Yeah, ours is, I mean, shout out to UHP. They like very vocalize on the city that you're in.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I love is that their contractors are the contractors that I would call myself. So I think the other thing too is sometimes like when you get with these national companies, like there isn't a connect where like these guys, I know who they are, see
Right.
them at places. When something doesn't seem right, I mean, I think it was the 4th of July weekend and somebody's AC went out and they couldn't find their home. There was this whole rigmarole. And instead of like fretting about it, I just literally sent him a text. I was like, I know it's the 4th of July, but do they have coverage? And then he wrote back, anything for you. This is their number, right? So like having to be able to have those types of relations with people like, are real on the other side, I think is really important too.
Yeah. Awesome. No, I love that. And then is that something that like it sounds like you basically tell the seller, like if you're going to a listing, that these are their responsibility for them to pay for out of pocket, correct?
Yeah, unless we were going to negotiate a higher compensation.
Yeah, no, I think it's definitely smart. And I think that's something too that can differentiate you as the listing agent, because more than likely, in my opinion, the other agents that are, trying to go to that same listing and win that listing, they're not going to have those same types of conversations. Like they're going to hyper focus on their own compensation and not the value and the different benefits that can come to the that they're providing or that you can stack in there. So it's making sure that you have those different tools and resources depending on which case and which scenario you need to run through.
I think, that just reminds me too of it's so important to work with a local realtor and a knowledgeable realtor. So for example, I went to a listing preview on Monday night and it was that hail, right? Like I knew as soon as I pulled in the driveway, I was like, oh, they didn't have their roof replaced because I can see moss growing on it and moss didn't grow in 2 years, right? So like I knew right away, that was like my second question to him is, how old is your roof? If you hired a realtor from 3 hours away to list your property, like they sure as heck don't know that a hailstorm came through here 2 years ago, right? So I think like it just goes back to like working with people that are so familiar with it so that you don't, now they're fully aware. They didn't have to wait for an inspection to have that come up. But again, it's important because we have those connections too with the local people that are willing to help.
Mm-hmm. And I think too, like going and identifying those issues, those defects, and being able to say something right away to the seller, to where I think that a typical agent might take a little bit of time to bring that up or not be so direct in asking the question, right? Like those are the things that like I think you have to spearhead and like hit it right on the head right at the beginning, because if you're not calling them out or not seeing it, like what kind of other issues are there going to be? But also by you being that direct, it shows how you're completely different than everybody else. You're looking at the property. You're not just there to sign the docs and, throw a sign in the yard. You're making sure that this is going to be a great transaction. So it's okay to ask those challenging questions or those difficult questions.
I think that's what I love is like when I go to a listing preview and I'll ask these questions and they'll be like I know someone else has been there, right? Mm-hmm. And then they'll be like, how come the other realtor didn't ask me those questions? And I was like, I don't know. That's a good question, but this is how I conduct, these things. These are the things I need to know as far as how we're going to list your property or what defects. So, I think that some agents stray away from those hard conversations, even the compensation question. I just had that discussion with an agent this morning about you need to make sure that, if a seller, a lot of times they'll beat me to the punch, but if they haven't, like I don't leave there without talking about that. And I know that like 9 out of 10 agents are probably avoiding that conversation where I don't have any qualms having that conversation. And I think that sellers appreciate the transparency up front to have those conversations. So I think, whether it's the inspection, the home warranty, whatever it is, just having the upfront conversations with the sellers that's all they want. They don't do this every day for a living. They just want someone that's transparent and is truly looking out in their best interest.
And they know that they're going to have to pay you. Right? It's not like they're calling and thinking that it's going to be free service. So why try to, beat around the bush with it? Own it, value, right? Making sure that you bring it to the table. So cool. Good. I love it. Great tips for sure. Definitely learned some things from you. So thank you. As always, if you guys have any topics or need anything, reach out to us. We'd love to hear from you, and tune in next time.
If you've enjoyed today's episode, please like, subscribe, and share with others. Stay connected for more genuine insights and strategies to boost your real estate career on Facebook or check out our website. We'll see you next time.